What's going on, everyone? Today we're going over one of my favorite tribal decks in Magic, and that's Slivers. I know Slivers are kind of the boogeyman of EDH. A lot of people hate it, a lot of people love it. I think they're a great deck, and they are fun and varied to play, actually. And today we'll go over my Sliver Queen EDH deck. So first of all, let's talk about the general Slivers deck strategy. So it's a swarm aggro deck, which means you create lots of slivers. You play slivers, you play multiple of them, and then the slivers grant buffs and abilities to the other slivers. For instance, Muscle Sliver will give all of your slivers +1/+1. And then something like Bone Scythe Sliver will give them double strike. So now, instead of just having a 2/2, you have a 2/2 with double strike. And then there's slivers that do all sorts of things. And then we also have support cards that will either draw cards or make slivers huge. For instance, we have Coat of Arms, which gives each sliver +1/+1 for each other sliver on the battlefield. So it can make your slivers really huge. So that's the general strategy of a sliver deck. Let's talk about why we're playing the Sliver Queen. So it cheaply creates slivers that will get abilities and help other slivers. So you pay 2 mana, you get a 1/1. That's never just going to be a 1/1. It's going to have the buffs from the other slivers. It's going to have the abilities from the other slivers. So you're paying 2 mana for actually a decent creature most of the time. And then also with Sliver Queen, there is tons of combos in the deck. There's actually 2 infinite combos we're going to talk about today. That is the reason why I like Sliver Queen. This gives you a different angle of attack. So you can have a normal swarm aggro strategy and just try to kill people with combat damage, but having these combos give you another way to win in case an opponent has infinite life, or if they have like a ghostly prison or a propaganda out. This gives you another way to win. The first infinite combo is Sliver Queen plus Mana Echoes. So Sliver Queen's ability, 2 mana, put a 1/1 sliver onto the battlefield. Mana Echoes, a 4 mana enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you may add an amount of mana equal to the number of creatures you control that share a creature type with it. So when you activate the Sliver Queen, put the 1/1 into play, the Mana Echoes will give you 2 mana, and then you can use that 2 mana to activate Sliver Queen again. But this time, the Sliver will come in and give you 3 mana. And then you just do this, make infinite amounts of slivers, and also make infinite mana, which you can win many ways with. Sliver Queen plus Mana Echoes plus Lava Belly Sliver is an infinite combo, because every time you're making a sliver enter, the Lava Belly Sliver is going to deal 1 damage to target player or planeswalker. And then there's also the fact that if you have a haste sliver, you can give them all haste. You have Impact Tremors does the same thing, or Purphoros, it does the same thing. But, you know, a 2-card combo with your commander that makes you infinite creatures and infinite mana is pretty darn good. There's another combo in this deck that requires 3 slivers. You have Sliver Queen, Basalt Sliver, Lava Belly Sliver. So Sliver Queen, you make a sliver, and then you sacrifice it to Basalt Sliver's ability to add 2 black to your mana pool, and then you create another sliver. So you can do this as many times as you want to get infinite death triggers and infinite ETB triggers. And the infinite ETB triggers, if you have Lava Belly Sliver out, will basically just kill all your opponents and gain you as much life as you need. So these are some combos, and this is one of the reasons I liked Sliver Queen over the other Sliver deck, is because you have these multiple lanes of attack and multiple strategies to kill your opponent instead of just swinging at them. Now we're going to talk about the best slivers. The best slivers are probably the Mana Acceleration or Fixing Slivers. You are playing a 5-color deck, so you need a way to make sure that you can cast all of your slivers. Mana Weft and Gem Hide are the exact same thing. 2 mana, 1/1 sliver creatures you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. So you play a sliver, and now you can tap that sliver to add mana to help you play more slivers. This will fix your mana for all your different color slivers, but also it'll help you ramp out slivers, and then also help you keep up mana for certain support cards we're going to talk about later. There's Mana Weft, Gem Hide, as far as making you mana, and then of course the deck plays a lot of ramp too, but Mana Weft and Gem Hide are great at accelerating you and fixing your mana. Then we have Simple Buff. There's Muscle Sliver, Sinew Sliver, Predatory Sliver. These give our sliver creatures +1/+1. Which if you're making tons of 1/1s, or if you're playing tons of creatures, now they're going to be doubled or tripled in power, and that's going to be a pretty good board. And then, of course, we have Evasion. So Gale Rider and Cloud Shredder Sliver both give Sliver creatures you control flying. Cloud Shredder is special because it gives Sliver creatures you control flying and haste, so they can attack when they come down. So something like Evasion is important so that you can get over your opponent's defenses. You know, if they have a bunch of elves, you have your bunch of slivers, but you give them flying, you can kill them before they're able to kill you. So I think evasion is very important as far as getting around your opponent's blockers, but also there are certain cards that keep non-flying creatures from attacking, such as Moat, so giving them flying will get them around that as well. And then we have Disruption Slivers. There's only one in the deck, but it is very notable. Harmonic Sliver, 1 green and a white. All slivers have, when this permanent enters the battlefield, destroy target artifact or enchantment. If you have Harmonic Sliver, all of your slivers turn into naturalizes, and you will be able to destroy all of the relevant artifacts and enchantments on the battlefield, which is going to be very good for disrupting your opponent's game plan. If they're playing a lot of mana rocks, if they're like in blue, for instance, you can destroy those. If they have any sort of special enchantments, you can destroy those. So Harmonic Sliver, it's only one of in this deck, but when you get Harmonic Sliver and you're able to actually destroy all the enchantments and artifacts, it's going to feel pretty good. Anyways, these are the best slivers. Now we're talking about my favorite slivers. Starting off with Brood Sliver. It's 5 mana for a 3/3. And it says whenever a sliver deals combat damage to a player, its controller may put a 1/1 colorless sliver token on the battlefield. So this means whenever your slivers deal combat damage, you basically get another sliver. So if you're attacking with 3 slivers and they all connect, you get 3 more slivers. And this is sweet because it's a really easy way of just getting more slivers onto the battlefield. And not only this, but this can get insane because it counts the 1/1 tokens that you make. So now, let's say you have 3 slivers attacking on one turn, and then you make 3 extra tokens. Next turn you have 6, and you'll make 6 extra tokens. That's pretty sweet. I like Brood Sliver. It can get really out of hand if you can find someone to attack, or if you have evasion. Synapse Sliver is also 5 mana 3/3. Whenever a sliver deals combat damage to a player, its controller may draw a card. This is a really good way of drawing cards, which if you have lots of mana, or if you have mana left or Gym Hideout where you can actually, ramp, you can play a lot of those cards you draw. And then, of course, drawing cards is always good. It's always good to draw cards, and having a way to draw cards whenever a sliver connects is pretty good. It is 5 mana, so that's a little expensive, but drawing cards is worth it. We have Virulent Sliver, which is a 1 mana 1/1 sliver. These 1 mana slivers, you have Virulent Sliver, Striking Sliver. The 1 mana 2 mana slivers are really important because they're really like cheap slivers to get out, and they'll grow as the game goes along. So it might start out as a 1/1, but over the course of the game, because of the other slivers, it'll get buffs and it'll become actually a pretty good threat. But this one is really cool because it gives slivers Poisonous 1. So if you get this early in the game, you can basically turn your opponent's life total from 40 to 10, and basically all you have to get in is 10 times from your opponent. Now it's not infect, so you have to actually deal combat damage 10 separate times. But if you have lots of slivers and if you have multiple combats, you can do that early in the game. But one thing I like about Virulent Sliver is if your opponent has a lot of life, or if your opponent has infinite life per se, or a Platinum Empyrean on, which says their life total can't change, then Virulent Sliver can kill them, because then it gives them poison counters, which gets around if they have a really high life total, or if they have like a Platinum Empyrean out, because now it's dealing infect damage, and that'll kill them through those. And then my last favorite sliver is Sliver Legion. This is just a coat of arms on a sliver. All sliver creatures get +1/+1 for each other sliver on the battlefield. So it's just insane because all your slivers are going to get like +6, +6, +5, +5. Insane amount of numbers from this sliver, and you'll be hitting pretty damn hard with this. One good thing about these slivers is that let's say you can play Brood Sliver, and then after you play Brood Sliver, you can attack and then trigger it. You don't have to wait a whole turn. Same with like Synapse Sliver, Sliver Legion, you get the ability right away. Virulent Sliver, you get the ability right away. You don't have to wait for a whole nother turn, because this gives the effect to all your slivers, not just that single sliver. Which is one thing I like about slivers, is that you can just play these slivers and you get the ability right away. You don't have to wait a whole turn like some other sort of decks have to do. Anyways, these are my favorite slivers. One of the things that you had to deal with if you're a Sliver deck is rafts. So a lot of people that play Slivers will put a lot of Slivers into play because that's what the deck does, and then someone wraps the board, and then your Slivers are dead, and you really don't have much after that. So here's some ways to protect you from the rafts and the sweepers. We have Sliver Hive Lord. It gives all Slivers indestructible. I mean, that's pretty easy. You play this. Now they have to get rid of Sliver Hive Lord and then get rid of your board or have an exile effect, which is a lot harder to do. Lazotep Sliver is a cool one. Whenever a non-token Sliver you control dies, amass Slivers 2. So which this means is that if you have Lazotep Sliver out and someone wraps the board, you're going to make one giant Sliver, which I think is pretty cool, but it also gives you a board presence after a raft so that you can attack in after, you know, all your other opponent's creatures are gone. Spiteful Sliver is specifically here for red sweepers. If someone Blasphemous Axe or someone is playing, you know, a lot of those red sweepers, Anger of the Gods, Storm's Wrath, Blasphemous Axe, there's a Bonfire of the Damned is a good one. This says whenever this creature is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target player or planeswalker. So all your Slivers get this. So if you have Slivers out and your opponent is like playing a red deck, they can't Blasphemous Act without taking like 50 damage to the face from your Slivers. So, you know, if you're playing against a red opponent that plays red, Spiteful Sliver is going to be one of your favorite things. There's one thing I forgot to add on this card, and that's cards like Golgari Charm, Teferi's Protection, Rapid Vigor that either phase out your creatures or give your creatures regenerate. And these cards, what they'll do is your opponent will wrap the board, you phase them out so they're not affected by the wrath, or you regenerate them, and in that case, if they're regenerated, then, you know, they don't die to the wrath. So that's what I forgot to add on here. But a lot of these are like you have to have Sliver Hive Lord out while your opponent, or before your opponent rafts. You have to have these out before your opponent rafts. You have to have the Teferi's Protection in hand before your opponent rafts. So it's really time. Really, you have to time these correctly, right? So, you know, there's a lot of situations where your opponent rafts, and then the turn after you draw your Sliver Hive Lord, you feel bad. Or your opponent rafts, and then you draw your Teferi's Protection, you feel bad. A card like Patriarch Spitting is different. So 3 black, each player chooses a creature type. Each player returns all creature cards of a type chosen this way from the graveyard to the battlefield. You're going to choose Sliver, of course. You're going to play this, and it's not timing restrictive, so your opponent rafts the board, they're like, haha, I got rid of all of his Slivers, and you play Patriarch Spitting, get all your Slivers back, and then you're in business again. So I love this card because, like I said, it's not time restrictive. You can draw this the turn after you get rafted, and you're like, oh wait, that's a great top deck. Or you can play it, you know, anytime after you get rafted. You don't have to have it the minute you get raft. So that's why I like this card. And then there's another card that does something similar. It's also another black card. It's with Foretell. I forget what it's called, but cards like this are really sweet. You can also play Living Death. Living Death's a good one. Anyways, that's their protection from rafts and sweepers. And then we have support cards. These cards will allow you to draw cards so you don't run out of gas, so you always have Slivers to play. Or they will give your Slivers a huge buff so you can kill your opponent quicker. Descendant's Path, 2 green. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card that shares a creature type of a creature you control, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost. So basically, you have a pretty good chance of flipping the top of your deck, finding a Sliver, and just casting that Sliver for free. Obviously, this card does whiff sometimes, but, you know, sometimes you get a free Sliver. So that's pretty sweet. Coat of Arms, we already talked about this one. Each creature gets +1/+1 for each other creature on the battlefield that shares at least one creature type with it. If you're playing a Sliver deck, you play this, and then you can just swing for massive amounts of damage. Really awesome. Titan of Littlejohra is a new one, 6 mana. You choose a creature type, so you choose Slivers, and it is a Sliver too, so it's going to get all your buffs from your Slivers, which I really like, because it's a 6/6, so if a 6/6 getting +1/+1 trample, or 6/6 getting double strike, it's pretty sweet, getting all your buffs from Slivers. But it says, when enters the battlefield or attacks, you may draw a card for each other creature you control that shares a creature type with it. If you do, discard a card. I don't know why they added discard a card. That's going to be fine. You're not going to really care about that. You're going to be able to play. So what this comes in, and it draws you cards. So if you have 3 slivers, which is, you're probably going to have more than that. It comes in, it draws you 3 cards. That's pretty sweet. And it also does this on attack. So Titan of Lijar will make sure that you have the cards in hand to be able to either protect your slivers or to deploy more slivers and kill your opponent. So yeah, it's a great card. The only problem, it is 6 mana, but if you have ramp and mana fixing, you should be fine. And then lastly, we have Biden of Thoth. So this is a really cool card because it has 2 things you want. So first off, it's a 4 mana enchantment. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw cards. This is a Synapse Sliver. So this will allow you to draw cards when you connect, so you can play more slivers and, snowball the game out of control. But it also has a secondary ability. 1 and a blue, tap it to make creatures your opponents control attack this turn if able. So you can force your opponent's creatures to attack so that they don't have any blockers, so you can attack in. You can force them to attack and kill one of your other opponents. You can force them to attack into your slivers so that you can kill their creatures. There's a lot of things you can do with this card. You can also do this, you attack this player and I won't attack you with my creatures. Stuff like that. You can use this politically, and it's a really good card for making sure that the coast is clear so that you can kill a player or you can force some trades. Biden of Thoth, so having those 2 separate abilities makes it really strong. Anyways, we talked about the Sliver Queen deck. I want to go over some other sliver strategies of some other sliver commanders. So first off, we have Sliver Hive Lord. It gives slivers indestructible. So what I like, if I'm playing this as a commander, is to play lots of rafts. Just to play like a sliver deck with like 5 or like 8 rafts. It's just gonna be really funny, because usually they're the best things against slivers. But if you have Sliver Hive Lord, you can use your rafts, kill your opponent's creatures, and not have to worry about yours dying. Second one is Sliver Overlord. Now, I know some people use this as a way to tutor specific slivers out for combos. I didn't really like it all that much, but what you can do with it is play with creature types. So it's has the ability, you can pay 3, search your library for a sliver card, reveal that card, and put it into your hand. So what you can do is you can play something like Arcane Adaptation to make all your creatures in your deck slivers. And what will that do is turn your Sliver Overlord into 3 mana to search your library for any creature card if you have something like Arcane Adaptation out. And then in 3 mana you can gain control of target sliver. That's a really niche effect, but I thought, something like Unnatural Selection you could use, 1 and a blue mana. You can pay 1 to choose a creature type other than wall. Target creature's type becomes that type until end of turn. So you turn one of your opponent's best creatures into a sliver with this, and then steal a Sliver Overlord. I thought that was a very niche strategy, but very fun though. The next sliver strategy is Rukarumo Biologist. So it's 5 colors. As it enters, you choose a creature type, and slivers you control are the chosen type in addition to their other types. So what you can do is name something like humans, and now all your slivers become humans, so they can get really strong from Thalia's Lieutenant. Or you can name elves and one-shot an opponent with Shaman of the Pack, right? Or you get a lot of value from Priest of Titania. You can name dragons and play Dragon Tempest in your deck, for instance. There's a lot of things you can name with Rukarumo to basically play other tribal. You can play like a tribal deck and play like a mainly sliver deck, but also have some other tribal payoffs so they can pay off with your Rukarumo. I thought this card is really sweet, and there's a lot of things you can do with it. Lastly, you have Sliver Grave Mother. And this one is interesting because its best ability is each sliver creature card in your graveyard has Encore X, where X is its mana value, and then you can Encore, and what it does is you exile the card from your graveyard, and for each opponent you create a token copy that attacks that opponent. So you pay 5 mana, or you pay whatever the cost is. You exile it from your graveyard and make copies of it, but they have to be sacrificed at the beginning of the next end step. To get around this, you can play something like Sundial of the Infinite to end the turn, and what this does is you don't go to your end step, and so that you get to keep all the tokens you made. And you can play Obeka. Obeka does the same thing where you can tap it into turn so you don't have to exile the tokens you made. And then one thing you can do is play something like Golgari Grave Troll or other dredge effects and self-mill effects to mill yourself and then have more cards to encore back. Play like a Sliver self-mill deck. It does require you to have a Sliver Grave Mother in the field. I don't know how good it is, but it's an interesting strategy. Anyways, Today we went over the Sliver Queen deck and some other Sliver commanders and strategies I thought of. We talked about the general Sliver strategy, the combos in Sliver Queen, what the best Slivers were, what my favorite Slivers were, the Sliver Support cards that are great, and Raft Protection. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll see you next time. I want to do these more often, so if you like that idea, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. Anyways, thank you very much. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.